Well, hello everyone. Mr. Reeves back with you again today, and we are looking at exponents and specifically exponents with integer bases. Now remember, an integer is either a whole number, which starts at 0 and goes up in increments of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on, or the opposites. So we could go backwards 0, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. So again, people often think of integers as negative numbers, but they don't have to be negative. They could be positive or negative, but no fractions or decimals. But when it comes to exponents, it gets very confusing, and I've been teaching for a long time. And every year when I teach this, students get confused. And every year I do my best to eliminate that confusion. And I will do that once again. So I am on Khan Academy. And this problem right here has come up. Now, if I ask students to tell me what that problem says, most of them say -9 squared. And when I ask them for the answer, most of them say 81, right? And then what I usually ask them to do is I ask them to put that in a calculator. And when they put that in a calculator, the answer that they get is -81. And then they are, wait, I don't understand. All right. And this is why we must take time to go over problems like this. So hopefully you already had a chance to watch Mr. Khan's previous video on exponents with integer bases, where he did a lot of problems like this. So this problem right here, what's inside the parentheses is called the base. And what is out here is called the exponent. So as he said in his videos, the base is what you are repeatedly multiplying, and the exponent is the number of times that you multiply, or actually the number of times you have the base multiplied. So this expression right here would be -9 times -9, right? The base is -9. We multiply that base together, and a negative times a negative is a positive, and we get 81. And that is the result that most students were giving me. So if I had -4 to, say, the 5th power, right? Once again, -4 would be my base, and 5 would be my exponent. And this one would be -4 times -4. All right, I'll go ahead and be consistent and put these in parentheses. -4 times -4 times -4 times -4 times -4. Now this one was a negative times a negative, which is a positive. And again, the good Mr. Khan went over this in his video. This time I have a negative times a negative, so this would be a positive. I have a negative times a negative, and this would be a positive. And then I would have times a negative. And since I have a positive times a positive, which would be a positive times a negative, this would be a negative. So remember, if you have an even number of negatives being multiplied, you will get a positive. If you have an odd number of negatives multiplied, you get a negative. And then that would turn out to be a negative of 4 to the 5th power, which I don't have my calculator out right now, but we would find out what 4 to the 5th power is. Okay? All right, if you're going, well, I knew all that already, Mr. Reeves. Okay, but take a look at this expression right here. What does this not have that this one does have? That's right, this one does not have parentheses. And this is where order of operations comes into play. And this understanding that that symbol right there, which we usually call the negative symbol, also means the opposite symbol. Okay, so this is what I want you to think of. I want you to think of this as opposite of. Okay, So we're going to think of that symbol as opposite of. All right, and then we are going to remember order of operations. Okay? So if we take a look at this expression right here, all right, what does this say? This is the opposite of what? The opposite of 9 squared. And remember, with order of operations, first we do what's inside the parentheses, then what do? Then we do the exponents. Because finding the opposite of is like multiplying by -1. That's how you find the opposite of something, right? The opposite of 3 is -3. Okay, because you can multiply 3 by -1. The opposite of -7 is +7, and you can multiply by -1. So if we're going to do that, we would do this first, right? And then we would multiply by -1. So this right here, do not think of this as -9 squared. Think of it as the opposite of 9 squared. 9 squared is 81, and then we get a -81, right? So that is the answer that we are looking for here. It is a -81. If I put a +81 in there, I'm going to get it wrong. But if I put a -81 in, ka-chow, look at that. We got it correct, okay? Now this one right here, the negative is in parentheses, right? So this one right here, because the negative is in parentheses, this means -1 times -1, right? The base is -1, and so this one is going to be a positive 1. Awesome. All right, this one is also in parentheses, right? So this one right here was going to be a -1 times a -1 times a -1, which is going to be, this right here is going to be a +1. A +1 times a -1 is going to give me a -1. While they sure are fond of these ones, I guess they don't want us to have to worry too much about a calculator. I think right now the focus is more on the sign than the big value. All right, now we are back to one without parentheses, right? So this is not -2 to the third power. This is the opposite, right? Again, this is the opposite of 2 to the third power. So it's the opposite of 2 times 2 times 2. So we do this part first, okay? Because it's an exponent, and we get 8. And then we take the opposite of it, which is you can get by multiplying by -1. So the answer is -8. All right? What do they got up next for us? Okay, here we go again, right? This is not -2 squared. If I wanted to do -2 squared, I would do that. -2 squared would be -2 times -2. This is the opposite. I know I'm hitting this hard, but guys, this is so important. The opposite of 2 squared, right? So this is the opposite of 2 times 2. 2 times 2, of course, is 4. So our answer that we are looking for is -4. Okay? All right, so when you are doing these problems with negative bases or integer bases, and by the way, this applies the same if they're not integers, if they're fractions, or if they're decimals, all right? If it has parentheses, then that negative is part of the base. If there are no parentheses, then that negative sign actually means the opposite of. All right, I hope this video was helpful for you. Until next time, have a great day.